Hi, everybody. We're the Skeleton Crew, and today we are going to be talking about the only Therizinosaur in Jurassic World Evolution 2.
And the only one you're going to get, because they're they're done. There's no more.
Thank
they're
God.
not adding anything.
The game is over.
No more DLC. We are done. We will not have any more videos for this game where we have to record late into the night on a Thursday and then somebody draws the short straw and has to dedicate the entirety of Friday to getting the video out on Saturday.
Or sometimes also the entirety of another day when they decide to implement a new editing strategy and it screws up everything.
Yes, sometimes two people get to share in the fun.
Well, you can expect more of these videos. Maybe there'll be a Therizinosaurus in Jurassic World 3. Well, it's probably going to have all the animals, but you know what I mean.
Maybe
a new one.
Maybe we'll get Dinosaurus.
That would be nice.
That would be lovely.
But for now, the only one we can confirm we're going to talk about on this channel is Therizinosaurus itself, as portrayed in Jurassic World Dominion. So we're gonna let them loose here. Dalton's built a wonderful recreation of the Nemeth Formation, which I don't think has ever gotten to share taxa before, because most of them have come out in DLC. So it's we've got some friends in here. I guess we'll see them later.
Yeah.
Is the Therizinosaurus going to murder them?
But before we release...
yes.
There are names.
There are names, and we have plugs.
I guess let's get the plugs out of the way first. If you're watching this video, you probably know who we are, and you may know that in April we went to Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We have some pins left over from the pins that we ordered to sell at the con, and so we have put them up on Etsy, link in the description. If you like the Skeleton Crew, if you want to see any of these beautiful pins on your own backpack or shirt or any of your own belongings, I will not judge you for anything you do with these pins so long as you purchase them. You can go to the Etsy page and you can find them there. They're great. Amelia's not here today, but she did an amazing job with a lot of these pins. They're mostly her work. Scott did a lot of work on the design of one of them in particular, and that is being...
The one that is underperforming the most.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody.
The one nobody is buying.
Are you right there, audience member, are you built different? Why don't you tell the entire world that you are by buying our built different pin? And it will also make me happy, because that's the one that I gave a lot of design inspiration to.
Yes. Make Scott feel good and buy the pin he designed. We also, of course, exhort you, as always, that if you enjoy our videos, we'd appreciate you showing that by liking the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the Skeleton Crew if you haven't already. Also, if you really like what we do and you want to support us in our quest to make more science communication stuff available for free online, we would appreciate if you consider supporting us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon, you're really doing a lot to ensure that we can keep doing what we do here, and you'll get a bunch of benefits like access to our Discord server and your name in the credits of these videos, along with a whole host of other things. So thank you very much for that in advance.
And buy
with
pins.
That, I'll now let you know who I am. Do you know who I am is the question I ask a lot at my workplace anytime I'm questioned or challenged in any way. I am Dr. James Napoli. I'm a research instructor at the Stony Brook University Department of Anatomical Sciences within the Renaissance School of Medicine.
Oh, yeah, Amelia.
Amelia's not here.
Yeah.
Amelia can't join us today.
Hi, everyone. My name is Scott Johnston. I am the vertebrate paleontology, fossil preparator, and technician at Harvard University's Museum of Comparative Zoology.
A pleasure to meet you, Scott. Hi, my name's Alex Rubenstahl. I'm a PhD candidate at Yale University, and 24 years ago, I met your father at a dark crossroads. I'm coming to collect.
Alex, for half a second, I thought that was directed at me specifically, and I'm like,
maybe
it was.
How do you know my dad?
Were you going to say something, James?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was thinking about it, but I've decided not to.
No, say it. I want to hear it.
I was just going to say, this is our last episode we're recording before Father's Day.
Oh, it is.
Oh, very
good.
That's a holiday I never think about and forget exists.
All right. Okay. Everyone feel bad for Dalton.
Don't feel bad.
Why?
I get to listen. I don't have to. It's like when Mother's Day comes around and you get the like heart palpitations. You're like, oh, did I forget Mother's Day? I don't have to worry about that for Father's Day.
No one.
That's true.
No one
does. But
worries about that. No one feels like that for Father's Day.
Well, that's because we're mammals.
Right.
And mammals
We're not
love their mothers.
You and me.
Right.
Stop it.
Oh, you're solving Alex, not me.
Yes.
Well, I'm Dalton Meyer. I'm a PhD candidate at Yale University. And together, we're the skeleton.
We're the skeleton crew.
Golly gee,
that might have been in
most of it.
sync a little bit. Yeah, we're most of the skeleton crew.
Indeed. Amelia is once again in the land of cheddar.
She is.
Yes. As a former president of the United States and recently convicted felon has said today, she's in a horrible city.
Ooh.
All right. So yeah, Dalton, why don't you let Therizinosaurus out so that we can say hello to this not so little friend?
Speaking of figures you would meet at a crossroad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can only make one at a time. Because they're so hateful.
They're very hateful and antisocial.
Great sounds.
God, they make good noises.
Are they Star Wars fans? They make TIE fighter noises. Actually, that was pretty good, Dalton.
I do a good TIE fighter. Listen, I don't want to toot my own horn.
Yeah.
Good video. How do we want to start? History, phylogeny?
Well, maybe we should welcome everybody to the Nemet formation.
Well, I think that we should start out with what its name means.
Oh, well, we could do that.
As we normally do, or attempt to do.
That's a fair point.
Everybody, say hello to the horrifying monster that is Therizinosaurus chiloniformis.
Hello,
which
monster.
Means the scythe lizard in the shape of a turtle. One of these things is true. I do find it very funny
turtles.
that
I like
Yevgeny Malayev, who named this taxon, absolutely knocked it out of the park with the genus name. It's perfect for this animal and for the group as a whole. And then fumbled the ball so hard on what it was actually supposed to be and look like. And I find that very funny.
It is very funny. Did everyone see how it drank? That was so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, where it goes like
wonderful
like,
drinking
it
animation.
sticks its hands into the ground to kind of
it does that in the film.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a film reference.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen
And the only good scene in the movie. No, that's
really
not true.
is.
There's one other okay one.
What's the other one?
I like the Malta Chase. I think it's fun.
Yeah,
the Malta Chase is fun.
The only part of the Malta Chase I don't like is when the guy's like on the scooter and gets surprised by two dinosaurs he must have already seen.
Yep.
Like it's
Listen, you get tunnel vision on those scooters, man. I'm telling you.
You can ask my brother.
That's true.
Was he going to distribute an Atrociraptor across the plaza? But
Terrible. What a disaster. Sorry.
Anyway. Yeah. No, Therizinosaurus, definitely one of the few standout scenes in Jurassic World Dominion. But to talk more about science for a moment, because I think we should probably reserve movie discussion for closer to the end of the video.
Yeah, for the design.
I want to welcome everybody to the Nemet formation here because they haven't gotten to actually come here before, even though we've seen many of the dinosaurs from it in the game before.
Individually.
Oh.
Yes. So Dalton, why don't you tell us a little bit about this formation here that you have created?
Certainly. So in researching Therizinosaurus and actually making this enclosure, I too came to the realization, I was like, normally, spoiler to peek behind the curtain a little bit, when I make enclosures, if we've already featured a dinosaur from that formation, I won't remake it. I just go back to that save and I remove most of the old dinosaur population, because you'll notice that I overpopulate the species of focus so we can get a lot of different ones we can look at. And so I'll just send in some helicopters, pull out most of those, and then I'll pump it full of the new ones. I went to do that for this one, and I realized that really the only animal that I had attempted to do an enclosure, a naturalistic enclosure for, that wasn't in one of the DLC feature packs, was Homalocephalae. and its enclosure is pretty bad. Upon reflection, I did not like how I did it, so I revisited it, and so I learned a lot about Nemect formation stratigraphy in the process, and it's pretty interesting. So the Nemect is in a Gobi Desert formation, unsurprisingly, and it's expressed in kind of southwest Mongolia, in an area that's somewhat similar geographically and like geologically to the U.S. basin and range, where it's a series of basins and mountain ranges that kind of separate one another. That's thought to have been formed during the collision of India with Eurasia. And there are several different localities in the Nemect, at least in this particular. There's certainly more localities that exist or could be found, but of the studied localities in this really nice summary paper of Nemect stratigraphy, which, if you're interested, is just entitled Stratigraphy and Paleoenvironmental Evolution of the Dinosaur-Rich Barungayot Nemect Succession, Upper Cretaceous, Nemect Basin, Southern Mongolia. It's by David Eberth. And it goes through essentially 4 localities of the Nemect formation. There's the type locality, which is just called Nemect. There are these 4 areas at Altan Ul. To the northwest, there's Bugensav, and then to the southwest, there's Hermansav. And Therizinosaurus is known, at very least, from the Nemect type locality, which is where the holotype was found. And then there are referred remains from Hermansav. And so you might question, hey, like, well, there are several questions you might have, of course. One is what kind of environment the Nemect is, and then 2, how confident are we that these 2 different localities are producing animals that are coming from a roughly similar, they're pretty close geographically. They're not like hundreds and hundreds of kilometers apart. But how confident are we that this is at least somewhat contemporaneous, that we're saying, hey, we're getting Therizinosaurus from these different sites? And well, there's some really, really nice stratigraphic work that correlates the units. And Hermansav, that kind of southwestern area where some of the referred specimens, and importantly where the foot that's referred to Therizinosaurus is from, it essentially is like a big cliff. It's a big like bluff, and the Nemect is only exposed at the very top of it. Most of it is made of the Barungayot formation. And so if we talk about kind of what this means, the Nemect overlays the Barungayot. So the Barungayot's older, and then the Nemect represents time that has passed after that. Barungayot seems to be pretty dry, especially the top of the formation is pretty aeolian, so that means windblown. And it's like windblown sandstones, so think of like sand dunes in a very arid environment. And then you get like this transition zone, and then you get into the bottom of the Nemect formation, which is dominated by fluvial, so river deposits. We can tell that they're deposited by moving water based off of the structures in the sediment. And this is thought to be more of a seasonally wet, seasonally dry kind of wet braided river environment. So what I've tried to depict here, if we zoom out, is this braided river. We know that there are conifers. So I've done my best to put some conifers and some other time-appropriate plants around, as well as plants that the dinosaurs can eat. But there are a number of small kind of water plants that are also found in the kind of channels of this braided river system. It's so well studied that, and you can look at the sedimentary structures, that it looks like the predominant sources of water for this river system is coming from the north. So as viewed here, north being kind of up, most of the water is coming from the north, and then there's some water also kind of coming from the southwest and entering into this system. And then further south, I've tried to kind of depict a more arid area to represent the transition from Barungayot into Nemect, although it should be noted that that's a temporal transition and not just a spatial one. But anyway, that lower Nemect formation that's right on top of the Barungayot, that's at Hermansav, where they found the foot. It's also the type locality of the Nemect formation where they found the holotype of Therizinosaurus is also part of that lower Nemect. There are kind of climatic and sedimentological changes throughout the whole extent of the Nemect formation that it seems to kind of get wetter and wetter over time as it gets younger. But right now we're kind of seeing the first, like, this is not an arid environment anymore, but it's still transitioning out of that.
The Barengoyot Formation is famously, of course, the locality that, or the horizon that Curicula was discovered in.
Uh-huh.
Very famously. That's what,
Yeah.
like everybody.
That's what most people
everybody
know
who
about it,
I
actually.
know.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
I can't. In fact, I can't believe Dalton resisted the urge to mention that that's where that dromaeosaur had come from.
I knew you'd want to talk about it.
Thank you. Yes. The one thing I want to note is that there is like kind of an active debate right now about how much of what we see here is a time difference versus an environmental facies difference. But I think the fact that we can see Barengoyot becoming Nemet formation like in section at one area, or rather we can see a like in one geographic location, you can see a stratigraphic succession, means it's at least somewhat time based.
Yes.
There's a competing interpretation that the Jodokta Formation, which is like famously where most of the recent American Museum of Natural History expeditions have targeted, the Barengoyot Formation and the Nemet are all deposited contemporaneously. And the faunal differences we see between them represent environmental differences between the dinosaur faunas present at each place. So like the very, very arid Jodokta Formation, which is all like, you know, we think about it as like almost being very, very, very arid desert. Under that interpretation are just animals that liked the very arid environment, and their cousins that we see in the wet environment are things we like that liked a more fluvial environment. I lean toward the interpretation that Dalton provided here as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of a geographic signal too about like where the environment's changing first.
I wouldn't either. Yeah. And I mean, it's important to note, right, that like, it is observable within the Namek Basin that as you go up section and you can correlate this section across different localities, that you change from Barengoyot into Namek and you go from arid to more wet. And that like, because it is a stacked stratigraphy, it is by definition a temporal change in that locality, but without better correlation of like the Namek Basin to where the Jodokta Formation is, that is hard to say if they're being deposited contemporaneously and they're just representing different environments, or if it is like across all of Mongolia one time series, which that I couldn't speak to because I don't know the stratigraphy of all of Mongolia.
And the stratigraphy of all of Mongolia has proven to be a very difficult thing to work out.
How dare you, Dalton, not know this off the top of your head?
Dalton, do better.
Dalton, why didn't you accidentally solve this historical question in our field?
Dalton,
while you were doing research for this YouTube video.
Humbly reflect.
I'm reflecting. I'll do better.
And the other cool fact about the Namek relative to the Jodokta is that it's also empirically less cool because there are no velociraptor from the Namek.
This is true. There is Adasaurus is currently the only known dromaeosaur from the Nemet Formation.
Whack. Little, dumb, stupid little pedalungule.
It's the sister taxon of a much cooler dromaeosaur, though.
Base
Curicula.
Right. Big teeth, cooler.
Everyone's favorite.
More mysterious, less material.
But some of the other stuff that is in the Namek that is not Adasaurus, which is not in the game, includes Dinocyrus, is from the Namek Formation.
Pretty cool.
Which is very cool. Tarbosaurus, which is just kind of ubiquitous across Mongolia. So unsurprisingly, there's some Tarbosaurus there, as well as I mentioned earlier, Homalocephalae. Our
cutie pie. Friend,
who is okay, he's going to move. He had to contemplate life.
Just ponder in the bush.
But all of these are found in the Namek, and also they're all found in the lower Namek as well. So this is one of the better examples of kind of an ecosystem, like a fairly well-constrained ecosystem in terms of species composition that you can make in the game.
God, that's really weird. What a weird place to live.
It's weird, and it's weird that it's like one of the better things in the game where you can like, I could make a whole ecosystem in the game, and almost none of them shipped together. It's like been cobbled together over several DLCs.
Well, none of them. I mean, it's shipped together. Absolutely none of them.
Yeah.
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 The Homalocephalae's base game. Therizinosaurus is from the Dominion expansion.
Dinocyrus is
the Biosyn expansion. Deinonychus is feathered dinos. Tarbosaurus is Cretaceous carnivores. Yeah, every single. If you want to build your own Namek formation, you'd have to buy all of the individual DLCs.
You have to pay like $30.
This is our first sponsored video from Frontier.
It's the y'all hear of pay to win or pay to lose. This is pay to Namek.
Yes.
The only example of it.
You wouldn't pay to Namek.
I would. This is fantastic. What a beautiful ecosystem full of some of the weirdest creatures that have ever walked the earth. It's a very odd place. Yeah, like, I can't get over that Therizinosaurus and Dinocyrus were not just like, oh, they were around at roughly the same time. They shared the same environment. These things would have come into conflict with each other, probably.
I bet they hate each other.
They must have.
Oh, they must.
Based on vibes alone.
There's only room in this seasonally wet marsh environment for one pair of giant off hands.
They must have been like two popular girls in school, like just hate each other.
The braided river system is big enough.
I picture them. I picture them approaching each other from across the marshlands, like that. Like meme of Bane where they're both just arms out like this, just
like the Tamandua.
Yeah. Honestly, I would not be surprised if these guys had a threat posture that was like a Tamandua. Just
you mean
standing up tall, arms
displaying
out.
Their obvious weapon? I would be incredibly surprised if they didn't. What?
Getting a little controversial there.
Well, yeah, I know. One interesting little thing about the Namek formation is you may notice that relatively here, most of the occupants that we have in the game are fairly large animals. But if you think about the things we usually think about in like Geducta formation equivalents, we think of like Velociraptor, Protoceratops, Oviraptor, Psittacipodi. Those seem to be a lot smaller.
Smaller than this. Psittacipodi ain't tiny.
Well, it's a lot smaller than this.
Well, yes.
It's not T-Rex sized.
No. But it's big enough. As I said that one time when you were giving you intern the tour around.
Yes, it's too big for what it is. But in any case, I think it is worth just noting that this kind of well-watered and fluvial deposition that we are talking about in the Namek is very similar to the depositional regimes in most dinosaur-bearing formations that tend to seemingly preserve mostly large taxa. This is really well studied in the Dinosaur Park formation. Large-bodied animals are just easier to bury. It's like a weird thing you get in some depositional settings where smaller things are favored. And so I don't think this is really a very biological difference between these two formations.
No.
So there were probably a lot more small things in the Namek than are published right now.
And conversely, there were probably a whole lot more large things in the Geducta than are published right now.
Right. Although no wink on that, because that would imply that I know
Less
about
wink.
fossil material. Yes. Yeah. Also,
although, I guess I would.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would inquire at least, like, not that I'm suggesting it's a really real signal.
Yeah.
But one might expect that in the really arid Geducta, you might see fewer very big animals than you would see in like the more well-watered Namek.
I don't know.
They're year-round, presumably.
This is perhaps true. I don't know if anything on this is published yet, but there are like sauropod teeth from the Geducta.
Yeah, no, I mean, they were definitely around.
But yeah, like permanent residence would be a different thing. I mean, like, there's
although I mean
stuff, but like these are bigger than elephants.
Yeah. Right, desert elephants are usually my example with that. But I mean, there is probably some sort of faunal difference that's going on, but it's hard to sort out between the difference in depositional setting. Namek stuff is also just beautiful fossil material, like pure white, and doesn't get the kind of manganese staining that is common in Geducta formation fossils. So if you look at any fossils from Geducta or like images of them in papers, you'll often see like a black kind of spiderwebby stain thing that looks like ink splotches almost on the fossils. That's manganese.
They're pretty.
I mean, I think they're pretty, but like Nemeth stuff is pure white. It looks just like bone. Sometimes they don't look like fossils. Yeah, they're beautiful.
Hang on. Everyone should look in the background, these Therizinosaurus, as they're rendered, and it looks like they're in stop motion.
They're too small for me. I can't even see.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be seen on the it'll be seen by the viewers, but in the back here there's like some stop motion Therizinosaurus.
That's funny.
So anyway, we've talked about where it lives, but what the hell kind of animal is this anyway?
But where does it live in the tapestry of life? And that is nowhere. It is an incursion from somewhere else. No, Therizinosaurs are pretty cool, and in a supremely fortunate naming of this animal back because it was named, they thought it was something else.
Yeah.
Which is spoiler for the history, which was they thought it was a turtle. And I can't think of literally any other turtle living or extinct that has saurus at the end of its name. They're all like Emmys or Onia or, stuff like that. So good. Yeah. I'm glad that worked out. So we don't have to call this group like Therochilonia or something. But Therizinosaurus is a theropod. So this is the bird lineage. And within theropod dinosaurs, it is part of the more bird-like radiation of firstly of the Coelurosaurs, but more specifically of a group we called Maniraptora. Maniraptora includes Alvarezsaurs most of the time, Therizinosaurs, Oviraptorosaurs, Troodontids, Dromaeosaurs birds, the birdier ones. Not ornithomimosaurs. They are right outside there, but they are in a larger group called Maniraptora forms. Anyway, within Maniraptora, it's kind of traditionally it seems to be a stepwise way up to birds. Usually found to be the most primitive are Alvarezsaurs, then Therizinosaurs, and then the group we call Peniraptorans, and these are Oviraptorosaurs and the other birdier boys. There are some results that have gotten Therizinosaur's sister to, I think, Oviraptorosaurs.
Yes, although that is no longer favored after Lindsay Zano, my former postdoc supervisor, did her thesis on the animals.
Mm-hmm. Well, there we go. Yes. You heard it here, folks. Anyway, so yes, temporally, these things should be showing up in the late, early Jurassic, early middle Jurassic. Because, like we've established before, the radiation of ancient Paravians is happening in the late Middle Jurassic, where we get Anchiornithines and stuff like that. So the rest of the radiation of Coelurosaurs has to be older than that. There are absolutely no body fossils of Jurassic Therizinosaurs. There have been teeth assigned from the Middle Jurassic of, I think, England recently, from the Bajocian to Therizinosaurs. It's possible. I mean, they should exist. Whether we can, I'm not totally sure about the assignment, but it's possible. There's also a partial denary from, I think, like the early Jurassic that has been said to have been a Therizinosaur in the past, and it argued based on kind of this anterior downturn that is not seen in really any other theropod at the time. It is sort of similar to some prosauropods, but there are other features of it that have led people to argue it's a Therizinosaur. I would argue that anything that incomplete is going to be very hard to diagnose. Also because a lot of theropods may have downturned denaries. I mean, not like more than just those two things. And some problematic ones. I think Chilosaurus actually has a weird ventrally deflected dentary.
Jesus, what a weird
anyway.
Spider. Oh, there's also some footprints.
There are also footprints, yes.
Possibly assigned to Therizinosaurids that are from the late Jurassic of Morocco. And the reason why they're possibly specifically Therizinosaurids is that they seem to be tetradactyl, so having 4 toes in contact with the ground, and bipedal. So,
indeed. Okay. Yes. Anyway, no good. A good thing to bring up, Scott. The earliest confident Therizinosaurs we have is this cool little dude called Falcarius, which I had the privilege to see a lot of the material like 2 weeks ago. When I was doing, not 2 weeks ago. How long ago was that? A month ago?
It was about a month ago, yeah.
Oh, geez. About a month ago, I saw the material for some work I'm doing. It's incredible. There are multiple individuals in this bone bed. And it is this lovely transitional...
Not just multiple.
Multiple undersells it.
Yeah, okay. Probably hundreds, I think.
Hundreds. That is a lot.
I remember, James, you saying once they wouldn't be surprised if it's nearer to 1,000.
Yeah, I mean, we have repeat elements are pretty common. Associated elements are rare, so it's hard to know how many individuals there are. I'm not aware of what the minimum estimate is, but it's a lot. Like, it's not multiple as in 3, it's multiple as in at least dozens.
No, it's a cool sample size. It's a groovy sample size. And it's cool because this is a obviously transitional animal. Like, it gives Therizinosaur, but it is also in kind of size, relative elongation of limbs, development of the manual of the claws, and the skull. It retains many primitive features of earlier Coelurosaurs. So very cool. There are also a number of early diverging Therizinosaurs in the early Cretaceous of China, things like Bepausaurus.
Is that how you say that?
Bepausaurus? Yeah, I think so.
I always said it Bipausaurus.
It could be Bipausaurus too. I don't know. There are a few others. Also, I believe, and this is published, right? There's a very weird Cretaceous Maniraptoran from Japan.
Yeah, it's published.
Called the Cuivinator, which has been found to be an early diverging Therizinosaur as well, based on some features of the postcrania, and I think also some some features of the partial cranium, which is possible. Like I said before, this group should be around since the Middle Jurassic, so the possibility of a weird diversity in the Jurassic that maybe persists into the Cretaceous before we really get an idea of what our idea of what a Therizinosaur is has not yet crystallized. Anyway, by the Middle Cretaceous, which I will continue to use... oh, yes?
I was just going to say, Fukuivinator is, if it's a Therizinosaur, like, the recovered result is that it is the most basal member of the clade. That said, it's Barremian, like Barremian Albion. So I'm probably around the same age, too younger than Falcarius.
Yeah.
How old is Falcarius? Is that...
I don't recall the current age dating of that bed. I'm going to look into it.
Look into it. Anyway, so as we transition into the Middle Cretaceous and Late Cretaceous, we get the arrival of the Therizinosaurids that we all know and love. And these animals are characterized by kind of a number of really cool adaptations that make them...
It's probably younger, by the way. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That make them funky for theropods. Now, in Maniraptorans, there are a number of losses of teeth, possible diet shifts, a lot of weird stuff happening, and Therizinosaurs are one of the best examples. They have a retroverted pubis way before things start getting retroverted on your way to birds.
What we mean by that also is that the pubis points backwards.
Yes, yeah. So in early Coelurosaur, if this is the animal's head, the pubis points this way. In Falcarius, it's mostly kind of ventrally directed. And then in Therizinosaurus, it points way back. And that has been proposed for the expansion of the gut. Because as these things get more derived, their bodies get wider and they get kind of barrel-chested. Weird shape for a theropod.
Pot-bellied, even.
Yes, yeah. Additionally, the forelimb claws become more exaggerated. The necks become even longer. The heads have, I think, leaf-shaped teeth, right? Like proper herbivore teeth. So yeah, these are herbivores. I don't know if you've already mentioned... Scott has already mentioned the footprints that imply that they may be tetradactylous, walking on 4 toes.
Well, even like the foot
And also,
material implies that as well. That for almost all for almost all theropods, at least the non-bird ones, they typically only walk on their second, third, and fourth toes, with the first toe up, higher up on the kind of near the ankle. But Therizinosaurs, at least the more derived ones, are really weird in that that first toe gets beefier and beefier and seems to actually play a role in locomotion, and would have contacted the ground, and not just kind of contacted the ground, but been a weight-bearing digit like the other three.
Which is really the only anatomical critique I have about this model.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's unfortunate, given the material that we have of Therizinosaurus.
Yes.
Alex made a phenomenal joke when
one of my best tweets ever.
It was so good when Dominion was first unveiled and they showed the Therizinosaurus for the first time in that.
It was like a Life magazine. It was some magazine cover.
Yeah. And it was Claire like looking up out of the water with the claws on one side and the feet behind as she was hiding from the Therizinosaurus. And Alex, your comment was,
it's the most accurate dinosaur in Jurassic World because it's showing exactly what we know of it, or something like that.
I think it was featuring only the known material of the animal.
Right, yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's the phylogeny. That's all I have to say about that.
Well,
yeah, they're interesting animals, and I would like to just add a little note about the retroverted pubis.
Please.
So this does seem to happen convergently. There are actually two notes. One of these is that the retroverted pubis became an important point of evidence in the dinosaur origin of birds debates in the 1990s because of discoveries of fairly complete specimens of Velociraptor and, as we now know, the related animal Shridivi from Mongolia. Remarkably, before this, Dromaeosaurid pelvis had been quite misinterpreted. This is like essentially the only huge mistake John Ostrom made that I'm aware of in his career. Like there have been papers reinterpreting some things he's said about other specimens, but in the original description of Deinonychus, he identified the coracoid, a bone from the shoulder girdle, as being the pubis, and reconstructed a kind of very weird profile of the animal.
Wait, I thought that was the... I thought he said that it was the ischia. Or is that...
No, he said it was the pubis.
It was the pubis? Oy vey, Mr. Ostrom.
Now, listen, we all have bad days. I personally don't think those bones look anything alike. But it may have been like something about how they were associated in the field where he made that mistake. Having like complete articulated dromaeosaurid pelvis didn't happen until renewed expeditions in Mongolia. And so there was a paper in the late 90s showing that Velociraptor's pelvis had essentially the exact same kind of retroverted pubis that you'd see in birds. The case in Therizinosaurus is therefore convergent, or what we refer to in phylogenetics parlance as homoplasy. Yes. I'm introducing a term here. Homoplasy is convergence. I am unaware of the philosophical debate on when you use one word or the other, or if there is a time you don't use one of them. I defer to you, Dalton.
I was just going to say, I think typically like homoplasy is mostly used in conjunction with like in opposition to homology.
I see.
And so like if you're like, this is homologous, this is homoplastic, but otherwise like convergent, I think fits the bill.
Right.
Pretty.
And the reason I wanted to use that term was because I was thinking about phylogenetic analyses. Like, this would be a trait that in isolation would make you think that Therizinosaurs are very close relatives of birds. This is why it's important to sample a lot of characters in your phylogenetic analyses and not just a couple, because you may see something like this and say, that's a dead ringer for the avian condition. You need more characters and more information in your analysis to properly pull these out as being relatively early diverging Maniraptorans.
Indeed. Indubitably.
That's my little note.
Okay.
It's a good note.
Thank you.
But given that we
preempt?
discussed, we preemptively, we kind of previewed, if you will, the hand and the foot being the known elements of Therizinosaurus, would it behoove us to talk about the history of Therizinosaurus discovery and what we actually know about this particular animal as depicted in this movie and video game?
Dalton, indeed, I do think it's about time for that.
Well, then, go. Someone, go.
Sure, I can take a bit of this.
Scott,
Go, Scott, go.
So here on the Skeleton Crew, we really try to use first like the original sources as much as possible, and we harp on about reading the papers frequently.
Please read the papers.
Although sometimes that becomes difficult, and it's very difficult in this case because the original description of Therizinosaurus is in Russian, and I could not find an English translation of this online anywhere. Luckily, one of my very good friends and colleagues at the MCZ, Nina Black, is Russian and speaks Russian, and was kind enough to read through the description and translate it fully for us. So thank you, Nina, for providing that for us.
Thank you, Nina.
So we can actually read what Yevgeny Malayev said about this. Now, what he said about this was weird, confusing, and baffling. And wrong. Really, really wrong. So you might be able to tell a little bit from the fact that the paper is titled "A New Turtle-Like Lizard from Mongolia." There's
Turtle-like lizard.
There's also a phenomenal artist's reconstruction.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty good.
Of what he thinks that this thing would have looked like. And it basically looks like if you crossed an Archelon with Freddy Krueger, and if for some reason it's on land. Like, it's a baffling depiction of a giant marine turtle.
It's like circulated online quite a bit, and so you might be familiar with it. I always thought that it was like kind of an all yesterday's, like someone's interpretation of like, hey, they thought Therizinosaurus was a turtle. I'll draw what that would look like. But it's just from the paper.
Yep.
Very cool.
It's reconstructed by KK Frlova. So not by Malayev himself. But so basically, a lot of people, many people are asking, why? What? And more importantly, there's a bit. Well, I guess we'll get to that. It seems like his belief that this thing was a turtle is based on similarities between the ribs that were found. So everything that was found of Therizinosaurus are in this original discovery were 3 claws, a couple ribs, and a metacarpal, partial metacarpal, if memory serves. And
that's this bone in your hand.
Indeed, one of the hand bones. So he looked at these bones, particularly looking at the ribs, and thought that they look very, very similar to the one seen in giant marine turtles, namely Protostega and Archelon, and therefore proposed that Therizinosaurus was a giant freshwater turtle that used its huge claws as scythes to gather, to like reap seagrass and kelp and stuff. And all of this is kind of baffling, especially. So I was reading through this paper yesterday at lunch, and my evil twin, the spineless version of myself, Cyrus Green, and by that I mean he's our invertebrate fossil preparator. He asked, he was like, "Hey Scott, so what kind of ecosystem was the Namek?" And I basically described what we just said earlier, kind of like seasonally very wet, but like interspersed forest and kind of savanna-y otherwise, and with some dunes and everything. He was like, "How big does Malayev say this turtle is?" And he doesn't just say that it's like similar to things like Archelon and stuff. He proposes it was about a meter wider.
Yeah.
Like,
Cool.
Of course
he
it
says
was.
this thing's
Based.
huge. It's gigantic. And he's like, hey, Scott, how is a absolutely enormous turtle living like this in a freshwater ecosystem? And Malayev does give a bit of a explanation of that near the end, where he says the discovery of the remains. He addresses this. So the discovery of the remains of the turtle-like lizard in the Gobi Desert, together with the remains of sauropods, trachodonts, and predatory dinosaurs, does not contradict the expressed considerations, but rather speaks to the great diversity and wide distribution of aquatic reptiles in the Cretaceous period. So he's like, no. It wasn't that I'm wrong and a giant turtle like this can't be here. It's that we have no idea how incredibly diverse these animals were. Isn't nature amazing?
Okay.
He was correct.
All right, I gotta say something.
That's so funny.
Malayev is one of my favorite paleontologists because he named a lot of important animals. I think he was not the best one.
He's no Barsbold.
He's no Rinchen Barsbold, that's for sure. And he's not even an Anatoly Rosh-Destvensky. Malayev, in my corner of hell, which is Tyrannosaurus systematics, is most notable for naming 4 Asian Tyrannosaur species that are now considered to just be Tarbosaurus. These being Tyrannosaurus bataar, which is the species type, Tarbosaurus ephraimovi, which is the genus type of Tarbosaurus, Gorgosaurus novogelovi, and
It's a mouthful of a name. I hate
it
that.
is. What's funny is he really captured the duality of Gorgosaurus species names. I mean, of invalid Gorgosaurus species names, I should say, because there's Gorgosaurus novogelovi and Gorgosaurus lancinator, which is a great name.
The coolest name.
Rad.
Yeah. They're all Tarbosaurus.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing how that works. This is, I think, reading between the lines. Now, I must say, I'm reading a translation of Rosh-Destvensky's paper sorting that out, but it feels a little bit like he's like, okay, so Malayev said this. I got to talk about it now. It's not right. He seems tired.
Yeah.
Well, Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
It is really incredible. Like, I found a terrestrial marine turtle. Isn't nature amazing?
He does later on kind of almost hedge his bets, and by later on I mean in 2 paragraphs later, where he says the low shores of the land, cut by huge riverbeds reaching 2.5 kilometers or greater in diameter, present an image of aquatic fauna in deltaic areas where they found suitable conditions for survival and rich food sources.
Okay.
Besides that, solo individuals or groups of animals could have been brought in as corpses by currents into the burial area. So he's like, I think that they were all living here and everything was great and there was enough food for everybody because nature's amazing. But if I'm wrong, they were just washed here.
I have a dumb question.
Answer?
Is Stupendemes a freshwater turtle?
Stupendemes? Yeah, it is.
It is, yeah.
Not so ridiculous now.
Well, yes, but it also doesn't have giant scythe claws.
Yeah, that's why it went extinct.
Yeah, that's fair.
Unlike theirs.
Yes. So I also, like, we keep mentioning how big these claws are and like it's the name of the animal, but I have a bit of a visual aid here because talking about them can only get so far until you hold one up, and
that's a big claw.
They're so big. Like, it is also just incredibly shocking how much like the head of a scythe this looks like.
Not a good name.
It's also amazing how little it looks like a rib.
No. There were ribs with it wasn't that a claw was mistaken for a rib. Ribs were found as well.
Did
Chased by Dinosaurs lie to me as a child and I never questioned it?
I think
What do you mean?
It's possible.
Oh my god. I can't believe Nigel Marvin would do this to me.
He's making up for it in prehistoric.
You know what I'm kind of
Kingdom.
You know what I kind of can't believe, and it feels like almost a missed opportunity.
What?
Like,
What's
why
that?
was this not given like a cool Soviet name? It's like a gigantic scythe,
Right?
like it should be like Leninosaurus or
Right.
something.
Yeah, seriously. I will also say it's really cool that this claw, as far as I can tell, is a cast of the holotype. This seems to be the second manual ungule, so the claw and the middle finger, which is the best preserved and the longest of the three. It seems like the first digit would have been even longer, but it's pretty poorly preserved. So everything besides like basically just the end here is pretty much preserved on the second claw there. But yeah, it's really neat, and I can see why the animal got its name because of that. But I do want to draw everyone's attention to the last thing about this paper that I find
It's incredible.
vexing.
It's so good.
And when I had my chat with Nina about like, hey, what do you want out of this? It was the first thing I mentioned. It was that I've heard through games of telephone and from probably people reading other translations or Google Translate translations of this paper that Malayev describes that Therizinosaurus was found in association with another large, robust theropod. And I was like, please, I must know more about this. Is this a case where he found a very large, weird-looking, robust theropod and also found these weird ribs and claws and were like, these must be from two separate animals, one of which is inexplicably a turtle? Or did he find some actual pretty good remains of Therizinosaurus? Oh no, I'm saying the same yeah,
I know
I'm
what you're
saying the
trying
same
to
thing.
say. Yes.
Yes. So is it really the case that he just found the claws and then another unrelated animal? Or did he find the actual first pretty good remains of Therizinosaurus and inexplicably cut the hands off of it and think this is a turtle now and take a couple of its ribs? So in reading through this, the first paragraph very helpfully shed some light on this information by saying in the second sentence, the remains were found in the so-called fifth dig near the skeleton of a robust predatory dinosaur. The skeleton of the dinosaur was extracted without detailed calculations of the separate bones.
Cool.
And it was never heard from again.
I was chatting with Dalton before the rest of you got on this call, and I was really hoping that this would be a case where James and his ridiculous encyclopedic knowledge would know that, oh, that's one of the Tarbosaurus that he misspecied or something like that. But
I know.
I'm so mad.
Who knows what it is?
Who knows?
What if it was a Dinocaris?
It could be whatever you want it to be.
I mean, listen, I can't say that it wasn't Tarbosaurus. Well, actually, when was this published?
54?
Yeah, 54.
So the Tarbosaurus stuff was published first. It may be that. It may be these animals. Hold on. Because Tarbosaurus may come from Bugensov or Hirminsov.
This is neither of those places.
Oh, no, right.
Yeah, this is the type locality.
This is Nemet, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, it is, in fact, possible that it's one of the Tarbosaurus specimens.
Okay.
However, I don't know that. Well, it's definitely not the type of Tarbosaurus, because that's only a skull and a neck, and that was found earlier. It says in this paper that Therizinosaurus was found in 48. The Tarbosaurus ephrimovi type was found in 1948. What I can't tell is if this is the one that was found at Nemet or not. Oh, it was. It is possible that this was. It's possible that this is the type of Tarbosaurus ephrimovi. I have no way of knowing that. Here's another fun note about Evgeny Malayev. How do you pronounce his first name again?
Yevgeny.
Yevgeny. Here's another fun note about Yevgeny Malayev. I was reading Rosh Desvensky's paper again because Rosh Desvensky's paper is good. And
Hey, what are you saying?
Well, it's very funny. But there's just so many times here where Rosh Desvensky sounds so tired. And I found myself writing in the same tone. Just, here's a little footnote. The scale under the picture of the Tarbosaurus ephraimovi's skull, the true length of which is about 1 meter, in Malayev's work was obviously inaccurately calculated.
Obviously.
The other two species of carnivorous dinosaurs assigned by Malayev to the genus Gorgosaurus, Gorgosaurus lancenator and Gorgosaurus novogelovi, are morphologically almost indistinguishable from Tyrannosaurus bataar, and represented only by specimens smaller than its holotype. The absence of a bony prominence on the lacrimal bone in Gorgosaurus lancenator, characteristic of other species in the genus Gorgosaurus, is merely additional proof that the form in question does not belong to Gorgosaurus. It is very Malayev's work, I think, was creative.
Everybody's so creative.
It was very inspired.
Look at this turtle I found.
Well, we could also perhaps say something.
Through God, all creatures can be turtles.
The lack of international collaboration because of the Iron Curtain.
Yeah.
So,
yes, I think that's a good point.
Yes.
There could have been, so some of these, like as we've said in prior videos, kind of the idea that birds are dinosaurs kind of emerged in parallel in both the U.S. in the USSR and the Western world. Earlier, I think, in the Western world, but it was, they had the cool Mongolian fossils, so no shock they got there. It's just looking at it and be like, oh yes, of course. But yeah, who knows? Maybe confusion could have been avoided if there would comparative work, but it's a shame because of the Iron Curtain and because the United States sold its soul to work with Nazi war criminals instead of a collaborative effort to build an incredible post-World War with the USSR. Collaboration and common good projects.
Well, speaking of comparative materials, that is basically what we know what Therizinosaurus looked like is entirely through comparative materials.
Yeah.
As you've heard us mention, the Therizinosaurus holotype is known from claws and dreams. And the referred specimens are feet. And that's about it.
Yeah. They found many more claws and claw chunks. There's arms too.
Oh, yes, there's arms.
There's a pretty good set of arms. It would behoove us to mention.
Yes, and I believe those are at IPMAS.
Yes.
Like the holotype specimens at the I believe
PIN.
it's at the PIN.
Yeah.
No, that's impossible. They're at the AMNH. I've seen them.
That's Dinocyrus.
You're thinking of the other thing
right.
known from only arms from the Namek formation for a long time.
Silly me.
How dare you confuse these two monster animals?
Yeah, I'm consulting Lindsay's review of Therizinosaurs.
Yeah.
So this is Xano 2010.
Mm-hmm. Which is where I also determined that the ribs which inspired Malayev to turtleify Therizinosaurus have also been are probably sauropod ribs.
Amazing.
That's cool.
And Lindsay seems to abide with that interpretation that they're not from Therizinosaurus.
Now, Dalton, I have a silly question.
What's your silly question?
Are they T-shaped?
Slightly.
So we've alluded to several times that the ribs look turtle-like, and what we mean by this is that they are T-shaped ribs. In cross-section, the ribs have a T-shape, which is a classic turtle feature, yes?
It is. They seem to have, so there's a figure of it of the rib in ventral view, and it kind of has like a ridge, or at least it's drawn to appear to have what seems like a ridge.
Right. So yeah, I mean, if you, the viewer, are picturing this, what we're talking about is you have the rib, so here's its attachment with the vertebra, and then it goes like this, and then on the inside there's a thin ridge that goes along the middle, T-shaped.
Yeah.
in cross section. So if you cut it in half, it looked like a big T.
The actual verbiage here from our translation is that the front edge of the rib is wider than the back, giving the rib a sort of asymmetry. The top end of the rib has a T-shaped cross section. The middle has a triangular shape, and the bottom has an irregular oval shape. I struggle to kind of mentally picture that.
All of those together, yeah.
Yeah, I don't really understand what he means by that. What did he mean? What did George mean by that?
8D ribs.
But apparently they're potentially sauropod ribs, and I think the big reason that he drew comparison to like protostegids and like Archelon is that they don't have like their ribs are less kind of carapacial, right? Than
Ooh, I like that.
Than like kind of chelonids and modern sea turtles and modern turtles. They're more similar. Their shells are kind of more like a leatherback, and that a lot of it's not made of bone. And I think that's the vibe he was getting from this because they didn't find shell.
Mm-hmm. And he did specifically say in the paper that like, oh yes, the shell was lost later as an adaptation to reduce weight.
Yeah.
Like, okay. What if I were to tell you that there was no shell there at all?
There was no turtle.
Yes.
Well, no, I'm sorry. I just want to say one more thing. It's funny. I'm reading the last line of Lindsay's remarks on Therizinosaurus. The rib material, originally considered part of the holotype, Malay of 1954, was identified by Rosh-Desvensky as pertaining to Sauropodomorpha. I'm really getting the sense of Rosh-Desvensky essentially being like a parent picking up after a toddler. Who's just like, I'm sorry about this. I'm so sorry. Like, he's just pulling things off the shelves. He's an absolute terror.
Painting over the drawings on the walls of his
and they're just like,
creatures.
no, you have to put that back. Stop. You have to, please.
No, it's not a turtle.
Gentle parenting Malayev.
No, if you don't put that robust theropod remains back where you found it, you're gonna lose it.
And then he did. But so okay, why don't we wrap up the discussion of Therizinosaurus here with actually talking about the design of this critter and what we know of Therizinosaurs in general that kind of Frankenstein us together into an interpretation of what this animal would have looked like.
Sure.
Let's dive on in.
Yeah. So you might have heard discussion around when Therizinosaurus was first unveiled in Jurassic World that it's a very inaccurate design of Therizinosaurus. And we've talked about what accuracy means quite a bit on here. And given that, again, Therizinosaurus is not known for much, basically, as Alex said, the only like accuracy-based arguments that we can make against this design are that the feet are pretty gracile and should have the first digit in contact with the ground. I will also say that the claws are very straight and they should be a whole lot more curved and have a whole lot more of a like kind of tall profile to them. These are very, very, very blade-like claws.
Yeah, if I was being like tremendously nitpicky, I think that the forearm would be a little bit longer as well. It seems like the radius and ulna are about the same length as the humerus.
Yeah. If not shorter, actually. Because, like, look at where the hand must start. Could we enter hand cam? Hand pervert cam?
Show us fingies.
Yeah. Don't
Let's
say
see
that.
Yeah. The
like I'm interpreting
here is pretty short.
I'm interpreting the wrist as kind of being the beginning of that bend.
Right there.
Yeah.
It's drifting. I'm not doing this, I promise.
Fast and Furious.
It's just doing this of its own accord. But yeah, they've quite shortened the forearm. This is to me a very nitpick because like this evokes the shape. It's just not quite nailing the proportion.
Now, Dalton.
Yes.
Dalton, I've heard passionate people online saying that the skull is highly inaccurate for this animal.
Well, Alex, I'm glad you said that. Because I would refer you to the known cranial material of Therizinosaurus. I can show you.
I have it right here.
Yeah, there is none. We don't know what its skull looked like, and I will refer you to the creature you can see in the far background on the left of this shot, Dingosaurus. This is the point I've made about the Therizinosaurus design, essentially for since it came out and there was discussion of it, right? and we're going to talk about it. Like what we think we know about Therizinosaurus is, in terms of its appearance, is cobbled together from its close relatives. That we've got kind of like various different Therizinosaur taxa have conveniently preserved various parts of which others are missing, and we can Frankenstein them together into a more or less complete ideal of a generalized Therizinosaur.
What we think is a generalized
Yes.
Therizinosaur.
Yes.
Because, like, when we did the same thing for Dinocyrus, we knew quite a bit of other ornithomimosaurs, and it's really so much of an outlier as Dinocyrus. But, like, there's a single good derived Therizinosaur skull.
Yeah. So yes, Scott has hit the nail on the head. That, like, if you had asked before Dinocyrus got published on in 2014, and all we knew about it were giant arms, there was in that time a consensus more or less that, hey, this is probably a giant ornithomimosaur, and it was restored as just a big Gallimimus or Struthiomimus or whatever.
Or bigger Gallimimus.
Gallimimus is big.
Oh man.
And then
It's a big boy.
They found more of it, and it turns out it's a different animal, and it looks very different. And it very well could be that we find Therizinosaurus, and it just looks like a big Erlikosaurus head. Or maybe it looks completely different. I mean, there are some features we would probably expect to see, like, the downturned dentary, which, what do you know? This has that.
They do have.
Beak, which, what do you know? It has it. And the teeth even, actually, aren't too bad.
Yeah,
I like that they're in the right place.
They're in the right place.
Like they start after the beak and they end under the orbit. Like, good job, you did it.
For what else it's worth, my friend Dalton. Dalton, Erlikosaurus, while a Therizinosaurus, is like 20 million years older than Therizinosaurus.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I don't know.
It's just like
I feel like there are a lot of
skull.
yeah. I feel like there are maybe a lot of mammals that are close relatives and have weirdly different skulls, especially when they're separated by 20 million years. So maybe it's not like a hill to die on.
Yeah,
that's just me though.
Also, actually, the teeth should end a little bit more forward of the orbit. Sorry.
No, it's that's a goof.
Well, it's a Jurassic World goof.
Yeah.
I would like to, I think, take this opportunity to say there is a difference between the best inference we can make right now and accuracy.
Yes.
And I don't think that a movie design should necessarily be bounded by like what we can phylogenetically bracket, especially in a group as poorly known as Therizinosaurs. Mm-hmm. We haven't really talked about this a lot, but like it's weird. Falcarius, there are dozens to hundreds, maybe thousands of them. And then everything else, there's like one or two.
Yes.
And they're very incomplete. There's a lot of material.
There's 3.
Oh, well, look at them.
Yeah, but they're all complete with feathers. So
yes, okay, that's
beautiful.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, some of the specimens are amazing, others are not, and a lot of specimens that are important have also been lost. Like they have not been, like they seem to have been poorly curated and are not accounted for. This has happened to a couple of taxa, not Therizinosaurus in particular, but there's just, this is not a very completely known group of animals. Like if I say I described a Tyrannosaurus species that didn't have a skull, and you reconstructed the skull completely bonkers, I would feel pretty comfortable saying, look, it's nested within all these things where we know exactly what their heads look like.
Yeah.
Its head looked like that.
Yes.
Especially if it's like another North American thing. If that happened, and this is, by the way, this is not a spoiler for upcoming work. This is just a hypothetical example. It's like, it's a group that's well bounded, well understood, highly diverse, and from a restricted geographic area.
It's a great functional example of this.
What's
Abelosaurus.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Which is an abelosaur with a long, weird, it looks nothing like its relatives. And it is, they're not getting out of South America at that point, brother.
Right. I'm just saying, I think if we had a lot of Therizinosaurs, I would feel a little more like charitable toward the take of, we know what this should have looked like, but we don't really. The late Cretaceous record of these animals is quite poor.
Yeah. They were there.
Right. The phylogenetic bracket is supposed to work as an inference-making framework, not a determination of absolute law about what something looked like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, yeah, if you're a paleo artist and you want to make the most scientifically informed Therizinosaurus possible, you kind of only have these other taxa to go off of.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not what's being done here. And also, that doesn't mean that that is what it did look like. That is an expression of this is what the available evidence can best be interpreted as saying this looked like, which is a very different statement.
Yeah. I will say, like, this is in no regards shade to people who make very conservative Therizinosaurus reconstructions. Like, that's
not at all.
There's space for that, and there's validity in doing that. There absolutely is.
If I were making museum design, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
And
same here.
And we are also not saying that this is just as plausible as a more conservative design. That, like, yeah, we would expect a whole lot of other things to be a bit different. The tail's a bit long. It's kind of lacking a pot belly. The legs are very gracile for what it is.
Yeah.
But these are things that are not known.
And also, to my, this is a very personal thing. So, my barometer for this is different than yours. Like, even changing all of those things, like, I don't find this, like, I don't find those to be extremely major changes to the design of this.
No.
It's like tilting it. If you put it in Photoshop, right, you would kind of like tilt it up a little bit, like use the like blow up feature to like, and then you did it, and then shrink.
I'm gonna say that I feel very similar about this design that Amelia does to the Jurassic World Mosasaur. To speak for her when she is not here to confirm or deny that. In that there are specific things that you can point at and say, like, probably not, this is a bit different, but overall it gives the vibe and is enough of a touchstone of this animal that whenever I talk about that Therizinosaurus is one of my favorite dinosaurs, or Therizinosaurs in general, I find them absolutely fascinating. I always point to and say, like, oh, did you watch Dominion? It was the Freddy Krueger monster plant-eating dinosaur that absolutely just wrecks a deer for no reason besides it's in the way. And like, oh, yeah. And that really good scene in the movie. It was like, yeah. It's like, wait, that thing was real? It was like, yeah.
I don't love this design. We're not ranking it yet, but I don't love it, but I do agree with you. What I do wish is that it didn't do as much sanding the edges off of kind of what we know about Therizinosaurus, because I think there's ways to play it up.
Critique, yeah.
Right? Like it's not, I don't really care about the head, because I think the head does a good job of evoking the kind of animal this is, even if it's not a scientifically accurate one. Like, the Pyroraptor head bothers me a lot more because it's just really ugly. Right.
Yeah.
And it looks, again, for me, it's biologically plausible. And I think when things are greebled properly in a way where they look like real animals, I like them regardless of accuracy. But an accurate design usually looks more biologically plausible because it just looks like the animal. Like, that's at least what I'm learning about my own tastes from the process of making this series. But Therizinosaurus here, I wish they'd, like, what if they gave it these really spindly arms? Like, what if they'd given it really, really long, like, muscular arms that made it, you know what I mean? Like a really imposing animal, kind of like a grizzly bear type presence, where it could have a very different stage presence in the movie than everything else. And it is pretty unique, but I wish it were more.
Sure.
Like, I think giving it that really wide pot belly and really, really big arms and kind of just showing it moving around in a Godzilla pose, which is how we think they really stood. Like, they're quite vertically oriented animals. I think it would have been cool because it would have just visually signaled how different the animal is.
Yeah.
And the added bonus is that's what it really looked like.
Yeah.
It would have also been good character design, though. Sorry, Scott, you go ahead.
No, it's fine. They did kind of general theropod the rest of the body a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit more than I also would like. It would have been, I would have liked it a whole lot better if it was just kind of like basically as good as they did the Carnotaurus.
Yeah.
Where like the Carnotaurus in Jurassic World it really is just nitpicks that are different. It's like maybe the arms are like 2 inches too long.
Right.
But Yeah, I would have liked that as well. And another thing that I'll just segue into one very short final point here about something that
Just
would make
one
it
more
different.
thing.
And I found really interesting in my digging into this is exactly how different this thing would have moved around. Because we did mention that it had the four-toed locomotion that we don't really see in any other non-avian dinosaurs, and the avian dinosaurs do it really weird too. But there are trackways of an ichnotaxon called Macropodosaurus. So an ichnotaxon is like a genus and species that we give to a set of footprints to like name them for ease of reference without assigning them to a specific animal, because unless the animal died in those tracks, we won't know exactly what critter made it. But
right.
Macropodosaurus,
State fossil of Connecticut is Eubrontes.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right. An
Gralator
ichnotaxon
is a very famous one that you might see on the side of a U-Haul truck. It's the one that's depicted as Dilophosaurus.
Yes.
I thought that was Eubrontes. Gralator is
Gralator's the small one. Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. Switch those. Yeah. So Eubrontes you've seen on the side of a U-Haul truck. But so one of the things that's really interesting, well, there's two things that are super interesting about Macropodosaurus. One, it's in a bunch of places. There are trackways around Asia. There's some in Poland. There's some in Morocco. There's some in North America. And they are all relatively large, four-toed footprints that I did mention that are... Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Four-toed footprints that seem to be plantigrade, which is really, really weird. Almost all dinosaurs are digitigrade, meaning that they walked on their toes with their ankles off the ground, kind of like what you see on the back legs of dogs, or like most animals, really. Plantigrade posture, where the heel actually contacts the ground, is relatively rare in a lot of animals. We do it, bears do it, and giant ground sloths. And it has been proposed that, and in looking at the foot material of some of these larger therizinosaurs, their metatarsals are really, really short. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that as these guys got larger, they actually became plantigrade and were convergent on ground sloths and that sort of locomotor style. That being said, several of the papers that I looked through about Macropodosaurus did mention, golly gee, these really just look like croc footprints. They look a whole lot like croc footprints, but namely the things that they indicate that probably weren't, that indicate that they probably weren't made from crocodilians, is there's no other drag marks associated with it. There's no belly drags. There's no tail drags. The gauge of them is very narrow.
I like what he's doing.
Yeah, well, I think that bears mentioning too, the way that they eat in the game, which I'm not a fan of. The gauge of them is relatively narrow. It seems to indicate something with an upright posture. The stride length is pretty wide, or is pretty long rather, and the smoking gun. There's no handprints. There's no forelimb prints at all associated.
What?
So it seems
well, that's because they walked only on the little tips of their claws.
Yes. Those, so it's indications like this that possibly point to that these weren't just misidentified crocodile tracks, and it could be the case that they are misidentified crocodilian tracks, and dinosaurs might have been more traditionally dinosaur-y in their posture. But yeah,
another bipedal pseudotsuchian.
Cool. There we go. Another late surviving bipedal pseudotsuchian, or a new adaptation of them. Like, I think that that's super cool, and I've barely ever seen any depictions of Therizinosaurus depicted as plantigrade.
Yeah.
Even more scientifically, like rigorous ones, like in Prehistoric Planet, are still portrayed as digitigrade.
They do give ground sloth.
They do, and that kind of ties into, I guess, the final point, which is those claws.
What the claws
and what
do.
they used them for.
Yes.
Dalton, you were reading a bit on this.
I was skimming a bit on this to confess. I did not have time to tremendously encounter.
Now,
it's been a subject of debate.
Now, Mr. Therizinosaurus, just one more thing. You say that these claws are not used as weapons. My wife, she's recently been getting into large display structures. I don't understand a lick of it. Crazy things. But organisms that invest so much in large, often serrated or curved structures very rarely don't use them as some kind of defense. So I'm just hoping you can tell me, what are you doing with them?
It's been a subject of some debate. If it was a turtle, it's cutting up seagrass, but it's not a turtle. It's a dinosaur. People have proposed that there's been proposals. Some have proposed that they're using them as defense weapons, hitting things with them. Other people have proposed that their primary purpose was used to grab branches and pull them towards the mouth so they could eat, because we do, based on their close relatives, have no reason to suspect that Therizinosaurus was anything other than herbivorous. So it's eating plants, and it can grab the branches and pull them towards it, and maybe like rake off some leaves. I think my gut instinct is this is not a one use tool. Now, that being said, there was a study that was performed recently which compared the morphology of the claws of many different theropods. In particular, it was looking at Therizinosaurs and Alvarezsaurs, and looking across the clade. So this sampled Therizinosaurs all the way down from like Beopausaurus up through Therizinosaurus, and everything it could in between. And they used an engineering tool called finite element analysis, a method which can calculate how a given shape made of a given material will respond to different stresses and strains, and can give some insight into like things like at what point will this feature fail, right? How much force can it withstand before it will fail? What are the patterns of force distribution across the shape? If it's under a particular stress or strain regime. This is like I said, it's an engineering tool, so it was developed and is predominantly used by engineers, like structural engineers, people making, bridges, anything that's got to like be under stress and strain. They're going to be using finite element analysis to figure out how the different parts of that mechanism are going to respond to the forces that it's under. And it can be used for biological things too. And this particular study, and I'm trying to kind of highlight just the conclusions here, but it seems to have found that the extremely kind of hypertrophied claws of Therizinosaurus, even compared, I think, to other Therizinosaurs, may not have been particularly well suited to doing anything. The conclusion is that, as for the largest Therizinosaurian with highly modified sickle-like manual unguals, Therizinosaurus, its ungual functions showed a very poor ability to bear stress. In fact, our regressions of morphological specialization to size-related parameters show a consistent tendency, but functional performances varied. The manual unguals of Therizinosaurus have several orders of magnitude higher stress distributions when compared to other Therizinosaurian unguals, suggesting they could hardly have functioned in it as useful a manner as the other unguals, but were more likely decorative structures. Our functional evidence cannot reject the ecological analogy of Therizinosaurus to giant ground sloths, because it could still feed efficiently by its highly modified jaws and elongated neck. So they are proposing essentially more or less that these are display structures that aren't really used, at least not used for feeding. I
disagree.
I respectfully disagree as well. I
respectfully disagree. This reminds me of all the functional studies that have claimed that like Smilodon teeth would have fractured if ever used for feeding.
Yes. When it's just like, man, it's really interesting that a bunch of different unrelated groups of cats have evolved saber teeth.
Also, they're its teeth. Like it has to use these to feed.
I will also personally say that like I've never really bought the interpretation of like, oh, it was pulling branches towards itself with it, when it's just like its neck was at least
long,
hypothetically longer than its arms. So it's like, why would it use its arms that like dinosaurs don't have the greatest range of motion with their limbs to pull things towards it when it could just use its neck and cut out the middleman?
It's also like the arm could not possibly reach higher than the neck.
No, it couldn't.
Not that we know how long the neck really is, I guess, but like, come on. It's not going to get you significantly higher.
It really isn't. Even if the neck wasn't that long, but like these are kind of sloped upwards animals anyways. Like it's, but like they were used for something. They were definitely like, and one of the things that I find actually kind of interesting is that Jurassic World kind of has a nod to them not being the greatest weapons. Even though the animal uses them as weapons throughout the whole movie, or at least the like couple minutes that it's featured, I just noticed when I was rewatching the scene for this episode, one of its claws breaks in the final fight.
Oh, cool.
It gets bitten off, I think.
Yes, when
Cool.
it like goes to swipe at the Giga and its hand gets bit and it loses a claw. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment that is at night at the bottom of the screen that they do not highlight at all. But I noticed it when I thought it was really weird than when the T-Rex and Therizinosaurus do the victory screech
Victory screech!
at the end after accidentally impaling the Giga and killing it instantly.
Kicks. You would die instantly too.
Oh yeah. I don't know about you.
I'm built different.
I would simply handle it. But when the Therizinosaurus puts its claws up and like screams like that, and it's missing one of them, and I was like, wait, when the hell did that happen?
Scott, I just got to say something.
Yes.
I don't think that this happening in the movie was a nod to a paper about Therizinosaurs.
James.
No.
Say that.
James, I don't think so either.
I know. No. He did say it as a joke, and I just want to be clear to our audience. I don't think that's true.
I do.
But yeah,
let me
I'm
go
sorry.
on the record and say
Yeah.
I do not believe that this was an actual intentional thing. I think that I was using it as a segue for how it was depicted in the movie.
Oh, I see. Scott.
And much like
fill out your failed segue card here.
much like a moderate boulder, like pebble or rock in the way of the path, James has prevented the motion of this segue.
Yeah, like how, like
That's
as
pretty
well.
good.
I don't think that the scene where Pyroraptor swims in there is a direct reference to the fact that, oh no, it might be an unlagin and they were proposed to possibly be fish eaters, or it lived on islands. Maybe it swam between islands. I do not think that was done intentionally.
Did you notice that there are? It appears that
What?
I wonder if this is on purpose or not. So, I've been rewatching this scene and I noticed a few things. One, I really don't like the way that the Giganotosaurus looks in this movie. But I believe I made that clear in our last video. Two, have you guys ever noticed this?
I don't know.
I'm sending an image.
An image inbound.
Images inbound, sir.
That the T-Rex has feathers?
That the T-Rex has feathers in the modern day too, not just in the Cretaceous segment.
What?
No. What?
I know.
Shut up.
Is that a
noticed
mistake?
Huh. That's
That's what I'm wondering.
A mistake.
I'm wondering if it was like a deliberate callback,
Or maybe this,
when that was supposed to be in the movie.
Yeah, maybe this is also just like a shot from that.
Yeah,
Like,
it could be. Maybe they
I don't know how-
used the model
Yeah, maybe
because they had
but
a fight.
because this is
It's
a very
only visible for that section where you've got a little bit of light illuminating
Yeah.
it. It's clearly
No,
not
you're
there.
right, yeah.
You know what it reminds me of? And it appears and goes away. This is fascinating. Hold on. we're now. Do you know that scene in The Aviator where it's a blink and you miss a thing, but when it's a press conference and Howard Hughes, being portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio, is being photographed, one of the photographs is an X-ray and you see his skeleton superimposed on him?
No, I've never seen The Aviator.
I imagine all of everybody in our audience whose favorite movie is
It's like
The Aviator's a good movie.
It's a good movie.
There's the scene in Fury Road where Mad Max is like coming out of the sand and erupting, and there's one frame of a volcano erupting, and it's just lava.
Because that movie kicks.
Hold on. I've watched it through a few times now. It appears and disappears.
Mm-hmm.
No way.
Yeah. I bet this is
an intentional
and this
callback?
is apparent. Yes, I think because originally that prologue scene was supposed to be in the movie, and this is while the T-Rex, and it should have been in the movie, and this is while the T-Rex is waking up to finally win its battle with extreme help.
It's old. It needs the help.
I just love that in every movie. It's like, the old girl's our champion fighter. She'll beat the other dinosaur, and then it gets its absolute sent to it.
Wrecked until help comes.
I ain't posting that. I got my ass beat.
Damn, every other dinosaur in the franchise got hands.
Yeah, the only is the only fight that Rexy wins against the Velociraptors in the first movie.
Yes, no, it's
so
a complete defeat record.
Undefeated champion, 0-4.
0 wins.
Yeah. Exactly. It's really I find it very, very funny. It's like they're behaving as though it's like Muhammad Ali, and they're like, oh yeah, my uncle's Muhammad Ali. I'll get him to beat him up, and it's like him directly before his death.
Well, that's a fascinating discovery we've made.
Yeah, so I'm glad that this made me find that again, because this is actually the one shot in Jurassic World Dominion I think is just cool, is immediately after this, when the Giga is mostly blocking this frame and it moves toward frame left, and you see the T-Rex standing up behind it, looking like it wants to go.
Yeah.
It's like it's one of the only shots where I feel like they actually managed to give the animals personality in their movement, where I was like, oh, the T-Rex really means business here. And for one moment, right, exactly. For one moment, I was like, oh, yeah. And then the T-Rex doesn't win on its own. Again, it uses the Therizinosaurus assist.
No, James, it's more than that. Holy shit, you actually, you nailed it. Because
the feathers come off, right?
No. If you look in the background, if you watch the scene.
Oh my God, it's the entire landscape.
It flashes back.
Yeah, there's trees back there.
Cretaceous.
There's trees.
It's
trees then.
That's a choice.
Wait, did I just accidentally find an interesting directing choice in Jurassic World Dominion?
A blink and you
Oh
miss
my
it.
God. I assume at this point it's customary for me to commit seppuku at once.
James, use this.
Yes, please.
That's what they're for. Rituals.
That's awesome. I definitely did.
Really cool.
That is cool.
No one caught that.
No,
I've never seen anyone catch this.
See, what I find funny is you didn't notice, and your brain didn't either.
Well, because it didn't have the thing. Because it's a callback to a scene that isn't in the movie.
Too subtle.
Right. It's a callback to a thing you had to go see Fast and the Furious in IMAX to see. Not even XD. IMAX.
Oh, no, not as XD. I remember that.
Yeah, I do too.
That is so cool. I cannot believe that we just discovered that.
I think on the high note of discovery, it may be time to rank Therizinosaurus.
Let's rank.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything left to say. Right?
That's so cool.
As we move into ranking, I'll just briefly say there was like a moment in time when kind of the best known Therizinosaur was Segnosaurus, and for a hot second, some folks thought they were prosauropods, but.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, there's kind of a paleo history meme that it went from this is a turtle to this is a sauropod to this is a theropod. But it was not long after this is a turtle that's most people were like, this is a theropod. And then a brief, short-lived, maybe it's a prosauropod.
Yeah.
And namely, one of those people who thought it might have been a prosauropod. It's the evil Jacques Gautier, Johann Gunter. If he was correct, it'd be Jacques Gautier, but he was incorrect, so it's Johann Gunter. James, that is a phenomenal discovery.
I'm upset.
I'm upset.
I'm upset.
How upset are you?
Well, I'm just upset because that's actually a pretty cool touch to
It
add in the
is.
movie, and I've spent so much time ragging on what I thought was otherwise an extremely mediocre film.
I mean, it's still an extremely mediocre
No,
film.
it is. It's just like I'm sad that I found something cool that to my knowledge,
inspired.
I've never
to
seen
my
that
knowledge,
discussed.
right? No, I mean I'm on Twitter a lot. I'm in
We all
many
are too
Discord
much.
servers. Okay, I have never seen anybody mention this.
If you are in our YouTube comments when this video comes out and you're like, I noticed that too, shut up. No, you didn't.
You didn't post
No,
about
we
it.
no,
found
you
it.
did not. Yeah.
No, you didn't. No one's noticed this before. The director of the film doesn't know this exists.
Yeah, this was a VFX artist who was like, I gotta do something fulfilling today, please.
I need to fulfill the part of my title that says artist.
Oh.
That's so cool.
I
I'm
really-
really
Let's
not
make it-
over that. All right, yes,
It's really
yes.
cool. All right,
You gotta rank
whatever.
it.
Good video, everybody.
Maybe I'll tweet about this tomorrow. No, I guess I'll wait for the video to come out.
Tweet about it when the video comes out.
Yeah.
Clout.
All right. Amelia's not here, but she said that this is S for sinister. I love its main part in the movie. And I will agree. We didn't really discuss the Claire scene, but I think the Claire scene was perhaps the most tense and well done segment of the film.
Yeah, I like it.
I agree.
Segueing into my own thing here. Yeah, like I mean, the Atrociraptor chase was exciting. The Therizinosaurus scene was actually tense, and if like it was the only time I actually thought I might see a character get killed by a dinosaur.
Mhm.
I liked its part in the movie. I think cinematically I liked it. This is for me a B, a high B.
Okay.
I don't hate it. I kind of wanted to hate it as a bit, but I don't. I think it's a fairly okay Jurassic Parkified thing. I think my dislike of it more than anything is that it has Jurassic World franchise visual language, which I just don't like as
Sure.
much. Like it doesn't look like this was something that was designed in 93, and I don't say that because it has feathers on it.
Mhm.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Whereas like the Allosaurus, I would say I could have believed that as in the original Jurassic Park
Yeah.
movie. Maybe we'll rank Allosaurus next when we spin the wheel. Who knows? But this animal is like, first of all, it's an interesting dinosaur to bring in. It's got a great role in the movie. A Freddy Krueger-esque thing is good. The thing that makes me wish it were more, and I think could bump it into A even with this design language for me, is just if it used more of the real animal as we think it would have looked to make it look more distinct and weird and off-putting. I would have loved a scene with this where it is just such a weird thing. The characters are initially just thinking like, what on earth is that? Like kind of unable to even comprehend what they're seeing for a second because it's so unlike other dinosaurs. Anyway, high B for me. I can't put it in A, but I could put it in a high B.
Okay.
Honestly, I think I'm gonna put this thing in S. I really like its depiction. It checks the boxes of what I want a Therizinosaurus to be while still being an inaccurate, well, not inaccurate, a not as close to what we expect a Therizinosaurus to look like design. I think that I think that its movie appearance is one of the highlights of the film, of course. I think that it's an interesting choice as well that like it's a blind Therizinosaurus. That I think that the only reason why Claire isn't skewered is because it can't actually see her. But I love that it's an opportunity to have an herbivorous dinosaur be like just straight up a bastard. Like it just absolutely murks a deer for doing nothing. And I love that. This thing was probably a pretty hateful animal if I were to guess. I I like the sounds it makes. I like its social animation in the game. I love that it's feathered. I love the way it's feathered too, where it's relatively sparse. Like, it's definitely a feathered animal, but it isn't visibly fluffy like the Dinocyrus is, which I think makes sense for an animal of this size.
Yeah.
And I'm probably a bit biased by the fact that it's one of my favorite dinosaurs, but like, even with all of the things that aren't depicted in the way that I would like them to be depicted for my platonic ideal of a Therizinosaurus, I guess that fixing all of those things would have it go from an H to an from an S to an H, or from an S to the highest S possible, because we go back and forth on what H means on this channel. But I'm going to give it an S. I like him, even if he would kill me.
I've changed venue for my ranking so I could eat some edamame. Delicious.
Ooh, mommy.
I like it. I like it as a character in the film. I can't give it an S, which is no fault of the design. It's just that I really like the shape Therizinosaurs are in real life, which is a silly shape. And I would have really liked a silly shape in the game. If I were saying, if this were ranking the dinosaurs of Jurassic Park Dominion, the film, this would be an S for me. However, this is a high A for me. I think it's very good. I like it. I like to put them in my park. I like their animations. I like that it's evil. I would have liked the face. I don't care about, but a big belly, that goes a long way. But it's very good.
Yeah,
that's all.
I think I'm in the high A camp as well. I'm torn. I could maybe go into S, but I think I'm going to give it high A because it's a couple things, and I think part of it is the posture and the kind of the length of the legs, like beyond being like a thing that's informed off of other Therizinosaurs. Like, it would be nice to see it a little different, and it's less noticeable, I think, in the movie just because of the way it's shot, that you don't really get like a nice left lateral view of it, to my recollection at least. So kind of the more generic theropodiness of the body is a little downplayed, just in the way that you see it. Because like Alex, S in the movie, I love it in the movie. One of my favorite parts of the movie, and I like this design a lot. But there's just kind of something about it, and I can't quite put my finger on it, that is keeping it out of S. And I think another part of it is also just it is very heavy on the Jurassic World design aesthetic, which is like a nebulous thing I can't quite pin down. But there's like a smoothness maybe to it, or something that is kind of bringing it down a little bit for me. But definitely high A.
Yeah, I like the description of kind of James had earlier of it being sanded down.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess with two S's,
it's very fair.
2 A's and a B, that's an A probably.
That it is. All right. As you said, James, 2 S's, 2 A's, and a B puts Therizinosaurus up in A tier.
All right.
Cool.
I'm going to make an executive decision and put him above the pile.
I think that's a great executive decision to make.
A good decision.
Yeah, I actually think you should bring the Pyroraptor down.
How far down are we bringing the Pyroraptor?
Well, it's somewhere in A.
No, but like where?
I don't know. Just not at the top.
At least below the Jurassic Park 3 Pteranodon.
Okay, let's put him back there.
All right, is it that time?
It's that time.
Well, with that, it is time to spin that wheel.
I'm watching the wrong stream.
Oh,
a
my
little guy.
God. A little
Yay!
guy.
Oh, a good one.
Okay.
Oh,
All
actually,
right.
we could talk about.
A lot.
My heart skipped a beat for a half
This is gonna be
second. I was
chunking.
like, chunking swords.
We're gonna have to do it someday.
We really are.
There's something I'm excited to talk about in regards to this.
Is there now?
Yes. Bye-bye.
All right. Well,
No, I'm kidding.
So next week we're going to talk about a dinosaur that's so small that you almost cannot visually see it when you play the game.
It's gonna be really
which is going
fun.
to be very fun for Dalton. But before we go, a brief reminder that we have a Patreon, and if you like the videos we make and you want to support us as we try to make more of them, you can support us there if you're able to and if you'd like to. Otherwise, anything like, comment, subscription matters a lot for us as well. So thank you very much. All of our patrons will be in the credits of this video, but as of recording, our most generous patrons at Gorgosaurus tier and higher include Benjamin Seepser, nickname, original username, Philip Fico, AK92, Christopher Bellis Jones, Aaron Anderson, Adam Molos, Camphibia, Dan O'Kyrus, Dinodom, Griff, King Zashu, Max Ironpaw, Pythonic, Ryan Steed, Swamp Ape Science, Wanderer, and Wheat. That list has gotten longer.
That's
Quite a bit longer.
Quite a bit longer.
That was noticeably. I was
Yeah.
like,
wow.
I was
Jesus.
my brain was like, you're supposed to say and wheat now, but I did not yet need to say and wheat for some time. So thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you to all of our viewers. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you guys. Now we are going to go. There's a characteristically or an uncharacteristically early termination of a Skeleton Crew recording.
It's not even 11.
Because we have to take. It's not even 11, and several of us need to take flights tomorrow for something that you'll find out about in the future.
Wouldn't you like to know?
Ba-ba-ba-ba.
Yeah.
Tuned.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
Have a lovely evening.